Upeka Vendibona, and the topic of this episode is the scope in C++. A scope is a region of program text. A name is declared in a scope and is valid from the point of its declaration until the end of the scope in which it was declared. For example, take a look at this code segment. It got three functions f, g and h. Each of them have the return type void. That means the function does not return anything. Now the names in a scope can be seen from within scopes nested within it. For example, assume that we call the function f. The call of the function f is within the scope of function g, which is nested in the global scope. The global scope is the scope that's not nested in any other. The rule that a name must be declared before it can be used still holds. So the function f cannot call the function g because the function g is declared below the usage of the function g. So when you call the function f, the function g call, as the declaration of the function g is defined below to the usage, there would be an error saying g was not declared in this scope. But when you call the function g, the function f call, as the declaration of the function f is defined above to the usage, there wouldn't be an error. You can proceed. But again there would be an error when g is calling. So I hope you got the basic idea of what is scope. There are several kinds of scopes that we use to control where our names can be used. The first one is the global scope. It is the area of text outside any other scope. The second one is a namespace scope. A named scope nested in the global scope or in another namespace. The third one is a class scope. It is the area of text within a class. The fourth one is a local scope. It is between curly braces of a block or in a function argument list. The last one is a statement scope. For example, it can be a for statement, it can be a if statement, etc. The main purpose of a scope is to keep names local so that they won't interfere with names declared elsewhere. For example, take a look at this code segment. It got two functions, void f and int g. The function f returns nothing, but the function g returns a int value. Both the function f and the function g are in the global scope, but the parameters are different. The parameter x of the function f is different from the parameter x in the function g. They don't clash because they are not in the same scope. The parameter x in the function f is local to function f, and the parameter x in the function g is local to function g. Two incompatible declarations in the same scope are often referred to as clash. Now the int variable z defined in the function f is local to the function f, and same goes with the int variable f in the function g. It is local to function g. This scenario is illustrated in the bottom picture. If you use the int variable z in the function g, you will get the scope error. Here is a logically equivalent but more realistic example of the use of local scope. In this code segment, we got two functions, maximum and abstraction. You find the maximum and abstraction in the standard library, so you don't have to write them yourself actually. Anyway, here we write the code to find the maximum and abstraction value of a parameters we are given. Now, did you find something special in this code segment? Some special operator, question mark and a colon. This construct is called an arithmetic if or a conditional expression. The value of a greater than or equal to b, question mark, a, colon, b, is a if a greater than or equal to b and b otherwise. A conditional expression saves us from writing long winded code like this. For most purposes, locality is good, so keep the names as local as possible. When you declare your variables, functions, etc. within the functions, classes, namespaces, etc., they won't interfere with others. Keep in mind, real programs have many thousands of named entities. To keep such programs manageable, most names have to be local. Now I'm going to talk about few scope rules regarding to variables. The larger the scope of a name is, the longer and more descriptive its name should be. For example, the variable x, y, and if are horrible as global names. The main reason that you don't want global variables in your programs is that it is hard to know which functions modify them. In larger programs, it is basically impossible to know which functions modify a global variable. Imagine that you are trying to debug a program and you find that a global variable has an unexpected value. Who gave it that value? Why? What functions write to that value? How would you know? The function that brought a bad value to that variable may be in a source file you have never seen. A good program will have only very few global variables. When talking about the scope, we cannot forget the term blocks, code blocks. You know that curly braces thing? We use blocks in functions and conditional statements such as if and else statement and looping statements such like while loop. Now you must be careful when you put a block within a block. We call them nested blocks. For example, the code segment that you see in the left side. It has a if block and a else block within a function block. It's a nested block. As you all know, nested blocks are unavoidable. So when you keep a nested block, be suspicious of complicated nesting because it can easily hide errors. Now take a look at the code in the right side. Can you read that code segment? I'm sure you cannot. It's really ugly. It has no proper indentation. When you write a code, use consistent indentation to indicate nesting. Without consistent indentation, nested constructs become unreadable. Hard to read code usually hides bugs. But when you use an IDE, it tries to automatically make your code properly indented, and it will remap a source code file for you. However, the ultimate responsibility for your code being readable rests with you. And with that, we are going to wind up this episode. From this episode, we generally talked about the local and global scope and the relationship between the variables and scope, as well as the nested blocks. From the next episode, we are going to talk about the declarations and definition in C++. Thank you for watching and stay tuned on with Edupedia World.